Developer, can you raise your hand? Like, or like related to developing? Okay. Then a designer. Okay. A manager, something. Who? Okay. Who has his own company or works in a startup? Okay. Who works for another big company? Okay. What is the rest doing if you didn't raise the hands? For small companies. Okay. Cool.
All right.
Hope you all see the screen. It's this time is smaller than the previous, so next one will be maybe even more smaller. This is how it feels a little bit. So we're going to talk about front-end heavy apps, and our front-end is quite heavy and difficult. And I kind of envy the people who are so light and have these nice websites that doesn't require a front-end. But let's start with the intro. So my name is Sandijs. I'm a designer, and I also run a company called FROONT. Who, by the way, of you have heard about FROONT? Okay, cool. And
I'm Leesters. I'm developer, obviously, and I'm CTO of FROONT.
Yeah. So FROONT is a tool to make responsive websites. That's simple, right? Actually, so that's one part of what we do. That means you can create websites, run your Kickstarter campaign. That's a chair actually that's made in Riga, so you can back it up on Kickstarter when they launch. And this is kind of simple. You would expect it from us, right? But actually, there are a few new things that we're working on. One is that with FROONT you can make outstanding publication. So imagine long read for magazines. So this is what you can build with FROONT as well. Obviously, it's all responsive. It all works on mobile phones and stuff like that. So the vision, what actually are we creating? So basically, we want to empower designers to create working code. So that's the whole premise. And I'm a designer. I know how it feels that I can deliver design, but I never can build a website. And I don't want to code, right? So I want to design. I just want that this process is automated for me in some code. So when we talk about web design, it's usually, oh, this web design is just like modifying Bootstrap thing. It must be simple. But in reality, there's way more. There's content, which is a lot of work goes in there. Accessibility, so what happens on all the devices. And there are trends, so you want to look cool and kind of up to date. You don't want to look like something old. I wanted to mention Microsoft. And basically, FROONT is a visual abstraction of code. So that's why it's also, so we started 3 years ago, I think. And that's why it takes us so much time. So basically, imagine all the front-end code. And yeah, sorry, remember, yeah, I'm a designer, so when I talk about code, front-end, that's my thing. That's I understand what it is, like back-end, don't even ask. To me, you can ask. So yeah, so what we're building, a tool that feels familiar to designers, where they can see stuff, what they're doing, but it spits out code. So code that actually works, code that's usable and fast, and proper code, as you would say. And so this is how FROONT looks if you haven't tested it out. So it's basically a visual editor. You design things by just dragging and dropping components. It's not web components, it's just design components. And later you can modify stuff. You can see how it performs on different screen widths, and then you can actually change that. So it takes care of all the HTML and CSS that's in the front end. And but the interesting part is actually to go further, so to how to design parts that are interactions and animations that you actually can't see in Photoshop. Like, it's not that it's like difficult in Photoshop; it's impossible in Photoshop. So this is something that the direction we are going to, where instead of just making the layout and buttons and stuff like that, you actually design also how it's going to perform, how it's going to feel, like are the animations fast or slow. And this is a sneak peek of you're kind of the first audience in the world who sees this. So this is something where we're bringing FROONT further, which is responsive UI kits. If you know what's a UI kit, basically that's a thing for designers. If you don't know, for designers to bring those components together and design kind of from like pieces from a Lego, and we bringing it to the browser. So actually, those are pieces of code. Those are all responsive, and you just kind of stitch it together, making your own website. So this is something nobody ever done before. We'll see how it goes, right? Nobody knows. So currently, FROONT is about landing pages and publications, but Basically, imagine like the future where we're heading is imagine that you can customize the WordPress theme, or maybe the Bootstrap, or even email newsletters. Who wants to code them anyways, right? So it's like this is the direction. The CSS and HTML and all these things is the same, and we want to take over it and help the designers to design it. So currently we have around 100,000 users, and so we are 7 people working at FROONT. Mainly it's America and Asia and West and stuff like that. So like yeah. And now I'm gonna give the stage to Viestos, and he will tell more about stuff that you understand better than I do.
So this is actually how our backend looks like. But the backend actually is the smallest part. We have like Python that's like just basically an API for our front end, and the node and the database to save it all. But this is how our front end looks like, and it kind of seems that there are a little less of those squares, but actually they're a lot bigger. The code is a lot more code there, and there's like all the apps lives there. So what are the challenges? So first of all, and most of all, I guess, the rendering performance. If you're designing in the web page, you want it to happen fast, right? In Photoshop, it happens right away when you like change color, it just changes and stuff like that. So to do that, we use CSS. So you're going to see in this example, so you just change color, and all the colors change like at the same time, very fast, very fluid, and that goes for all the page and for any number of elements, and that's the CSS. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's basically how you control your CSS classes in your CSS document from JavaScript.
Who actually knows about CSS? 3 people. Cool.
It's actually pretty well supported in major browsers.
So I understand that you render just the stuff you need. It sounds amazing. It sounds like a song, right?
So you just basically you only change separate CSS properties of a CSS class rather than just changing something inline or like changing your style sheet with just some separate properties of one class. So any project is a template for us, and that's actually very comfortable for people. But how it all started is that all of our projects had version. Well, the version control came from this thing that you want to go back if you like break your project or you had some different idea before. So and it was actually very, very easy for us to implement because all of our projects are actually a little SQL-like database on server side. So you just copy the database, you get like the previous version. So and in the same way, you can just copy the database and get a new project. So any person can copy another person's project and start their own project, and that's very inspiring. So, and now, one of the most important things, again, you want to see when you're editing the page that you're getting. So, and this is what we're doing. You're seeing the actual page. And so how we do this is we call this shadows, but it's actually another iframe on top of our main document, and that has all of the control elements. So this is very important because we don't want to disrupt the flow of the page, because if you have some additional elements in the normal flow of the page, you may see that it changes as you like export the page or view it from other side if it's not on your editor. But in our case, you see the exact same page in your editor as you're going to see in like another other view, and that's like very cool. We have the separate iframe with the separate control elements, and they all like live their own happy life. They all work together very nicely.
If I can add, is actually, so all the editor is all the HTML and CSS that you're going to export, so it's the same. So there is no canvas or something like in the middle. So actually that's the real code you're editing visually. So that's why the DOM, we have to keep the DOM clear, clean and everything. That's why I understand it at least.
Yeah, so that's why everything looks exactly as it should look. So and the final thing is the undo, because well, we actually didn't implement it in the very beginning. We somehow didn't, I guess we didn't figure people need it. But pairs, they do. So it's actually a very basic mechanism. It's just abstracting user actions and so allowing them to do and undo them in code. So, and another thing, of course, for us as we are browser technology is the browser support. So what kind of browser do we support? So the page that FROONT spits out is basically supported on any browser. Maybe the very oldest of Internet Explorers won't work. but the editor itself is only supported in two browsers, which is Firefox and Chrome. Chrome is the first one because Chrome has all the latest web technology in it, and Firefox caught up recently, so we support Firefox as well. And actually, allegedly, we support Opera too, because Opera is Chrome now, basically. It's the very same core, so it actually works, but we didn't even have to do anything. So the Explorer and Safari are some work that actually Microsoft has done great improvement over on top of the Explorer and Edge. So I think we're going to support Explorer sooner than we're going to support Safari if it continues like it did. So what would they do differently, Sandijs?
Yeah. From I'm also the CEO, right? So I have this my own perspective. And I wanted to tell you, so if you happen to build a team or a startup, or you're going to join a cool startup, so something to watch out for, maybe it helps. So one thing is to find somebody who enjoys management before coding, and that's pretty critical, and we kind of didn't succeed at that at first. So we had great developers, they were super talented, but nobody actually liked managing each other. So they were just coding and arguing about testing, and we also forgot the undo function because nobody thought about that. But it's and actually that was pretty difficult to fix because then you kind of have to add a manager on top of an existing CTO and stuff like that. So that was pretty complicated. And maybe it seems super simple for you guys, because but from my perspective, yeah, like you have to find somebody who enjoys that thing. Having an emergency plan, so Edward Cizo is the guy who invited us to speak here, so actually he told that such things exist, and that was after we called him that we had a 10 hours downtime. So apparently there are emergency plans and stuff, but we run on a very super simple infrastructure, and we don't want to scale like larger than we need to. And it was all fine for 2.5 years until it wasn't. So, but it still was fine, right? So now we learned, we fixed everything, and now we're back on Amazon, and all is cool. But apparently that's a thing. And one thing which comes from more from developers' perspective is relying more on the native things in the browser rather than coding like using jQuery. And even 3 years ago, so the native functionality was there, but it was kind of this new thing, and we relied too much on jQuery, but then it's too slow, and it's kind of lame. So, but all the dragging and dropping, and a lot of things are actually way faster than native ones. So what we would do the same, it's pull requests. I learned them as well, because it's actually a super cool thing. 3 years ago, it wasn't such a cool thing. For some unknown reason, but actually pull requests and in general how we organize the work is super critical. We can onboard new developers super easily. They can publish to the code to the master like super quickly and deploy stuff. So it's actually like it helps a lot. And we had some problems where developer at the very beginning when we didn't have this in place, and person kind of makes stuff and then like it works for like 2 days. And then it stops working and everything explodes. So pull request, I mean, who figured it out? That's awesome. In design, we don't have these things, you know. So using free hosting deals, that's amazing. And we are already on a 3rd servers that we have never paid for. And in general, like if you dig around and if you ask services to give you a free something, at least they're going to give you a discount. And I mean New Relic and stuff like that. So you just kind of dig deeper, and they're giving a lot of things for other startups for free, because they hope you're going to succeed, and you're going to start paying them, which everybody hopes. So that's why we're helping each other. I guess that's how I see. We would still use modern JavaScript frameworks. So Backbone is in our case. So it was modern and cool 3 years ago. Now it's kind of like a little bit behind, but it still does the job, right? So it's good. So this is something we would totally do and even more. So relying more on frameworks. And if you happen to meet another developer, which you most probably will, like developers for some reason not always like frameworks. It's like, you know, nah, I can make this in a week. It's like, it's simple. So try to convince each other that sometimes frameworks make sense, especially in front end. So yeah, maybe you have some questions now. They can be very developer related because Vesters is here, you know.
What was the reason of such a downtime?
I can tell my version, but Vesters is better.
The official reason is that we had an update for our operating system, and after that, the ZFS partitions were mounted in different order than they were before. So we've got the mounting partitions that had nowhere to mount, so the operating system boot would fail. And so it took some time for us to figure out what actually happened, because there's no logs, no nothing, because there's no OS. So yeah, it was fun.
And it wasn't even in the same day, so basically the update happened, so and then the restart happened couple of days later.
Yeah.
So it was total mess, and nobody could figure out like what's going on, and yeah, the effects, of course. More questions? Front end. So who actually does front end? If you like, is there somebody who is into front end?
I have a question about the
Four. Sorry.
When you create a design,
Yeah.
how it's, is it completely same on different browsers? I have some experience with clients that they, for example, paying for designers and PSD files presenting for me, and I have to make a website from that. And that they want taking the browser, for example, Firefox, Internet Explorer, and Opera, taking screenshots and like on the skin, putting on top of each other, and they have to be pixel perfect.
I don't envy your job, for sure. I think it's obviously like browsers render things differently, like even the colors, and not only of images, but also like the simple CSS. Like it's a nightmare, and that's why. Like most probably that would be another talk, like to explain what's happening in the world in terms of front end. But I think it's nowadays it's kind of lame to expect that the site gonna look exactly the same in all browsers. And I think what's way better is if you can present to the client how it's gonna look, like what are the differences. And if he sees like that the font is rendered a little bit thicker, like that's not a big issue, and you can't even fix that anyways, right? So it's like when he sees it, then he can make actually decisions on it, rather than kind of trying to make this PSD perfect, which is pretty much impossible. It's just about like when he's gonna give up, or like when he runs out of money. So it's, I think, yeah, it is different, but the meaningful, like the content should be the same. But if like there's one pixel something, I mean, it's the wrong battle to fight for, you know.
And also I want to add that this is one of the reasons FROONT exists, because when the designer will design in the editor, in the web, he can see firsthand that everything actually looks different in all of the browsers, right? So he can open in Chrome and he can open in Firefox, and they basically look the same, but there will be these tiny differences, like Sandijs said. The front will be a bit thinner or a bit thicker, or some color will be just a bit fainter, or something will be a bit wider. So you can't fix it, because this is how the browsers work. But if the designer sees it, if the client sees it, then they can easily accept it that, you know, this is how it works. It's not the error of the front-end programmer. It's actually just, you know, the nature of the browser.
Yeah. Speaking of that, are you aiming like to be more developer-friendly or single user-friendly? You know, because there are a lot
Those are the opposites.
front-end tools that are quite simple things, and obviously we all understood what you were showing us. But say if you would wanting a larger component, say you know, a teenager making his own shenanigans and wanting to make a site, could he understand your interface?
I don't know about teenagers, but so actually we're aiming for pros. So that's like, so we have users who are like grannies. We call them grannies who make a website for the flower shop. But that's the definition of simple user.
Yeah.
But I think so we're aiming for pros and for agencies who actually do it for jobs. So it's not just one website a year, but actually 100 a month. So that's the scale we're looking for. And we would be happy if we could simplify, but that takes a lot of effort. And in that market, actually, there are a lot of competitors already, like Squarespace, and so there are ways how to make a simple website. But there's way less products where you can make awesome publication that works on your iPad and you know, kind of engages the audience and everybody's happy. So this market is underserved, and that's what we're going for.
And also, I would like to add, for developer friendliness, you can actually inject your own JavaScript into our site, so you can like have your own animations if you want something we don't have. Like you can program it yourself.
Okay, I have a question. How deployment happens?
Sorry, say again?
Theoretically, yes, I'm a user of your service, and I want to deploy it.
Awesome. So
Yeah,
what's
awesome.
exact?
How
Like,
do
what
you
do you
have-
mean? How to do it? Like, that's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
So yeah.
So there are two ways. So the simplest way is just add domain to your site. So we offer that. The second way is that you can export the code. So basically you can export the HTML plus JavaScript plus CSS and just throw it in any web route and it will work just like the same thing that you saw in our project.
Yeah, so it's actually like the publishers are doing it in they're using that feature especially. So basically, the cool thing using FROONT is that they can export all the code and all the assets and host it on their servers, and they need it for like large audiences and stuff. So then they just kind of connect it to the Git and like go through it, and so basically we give all the code and all the assets.
What I'm wondering, does it have same features like a content tool has? Do you know content tool?
Yeah, no, it's
No?
no.
Is
So
it possible to integrate it that way?
we can check. Like it's not meant to be integrated that way at this point. So it's like if you mean like dynamic data and stuff like that. Yes.
Yes. What I mean is that like a direct integration that basically I'm publishing on your service and directly.
You can integrate the content on any HTML, so just integrate that.
So, but for us, what we're aiming for is actually simple static websites, and it's like the goes like so. There is no backend, no stuff. So either you use it for prototyping and designing phase, or you use it for something where you actually just like publications on a big scale. So you just need something that's super fast, and you don't have to change the stuff. You don't need the dynamic data. So this is what we're aiming for at this point. Yes. Thank you for the question.
So what is your business model? How you earn the money?
We charge. We ask so many people give us money. So
Not like per site, per expense.
So yeah, so we currently we have it for private projects. So actually, if you make a site, then all the projects you made are accessible to others, except if you pay. So it's a little bit like GitHub. So for privacy you pay, for public things like so it kind of goes back to the community, and that's the goal. We're going to change the pricing a little bit soon, but introducing the publisher's plan and stuff like that, so kind of scaling up a little. But it's as simple as that at this point. Yeah, and this is why I actually started to show it, because they're going to then like how you add a domain name. So that's another way, you make a simple site and then add a domain name. And this is also something that's a paid feature. So if you add a domain, then you pay extra. And code export as well, actually. So yeah, that's a minor thing. Okay, thank you. We're going to be around with that.